It's time to talk about Donkey Kong Bananza. While all the other Nintendo YouTube channels or podcasts are giving their initial thoughts based on the trailer, we bided our time. We waited. It was actually my anniversary, so I wasn't around to record a podcast. I'm sorry, honey, we gotta cancel the anniversary trip. They just announced Donkey Kong!
You should have told her that. Legitimate excuse.
Yeah. Anyway, I'm Michael, or Cotrello, your host, joined by my twin brother, player 2 since the womb. Anyway, yeah, we've seen the treehouse footage, we've seen the leak, we've seen the initial reveal, and gone into some of the information about Banandium and all this jargon, and we're here to discuss it. Now, something that you guys might not know is that we actually have a Donkey Kong-centric YouTube channel called the Kong Kompendium, and we have been, just doing Donkey Kong videos there. And so, if you like this discussion, be sure to check that out. You got
a hankering for all things Kong.
Yeah, if you wanna swim in the deep end with the nerds, we got you covered. And that's what this discussion is going to be. My reaction to many games is like, hey, that looks neat. But Donkey Kong is a different bird because this is 25 years plus since the last time that we've seen DK in 3D and 11 years since we've had any original Donkey Kong project. So there's a lot riding on this. Not only because the franchise is kind of coming back into swing, but also because it's a launch title for the Nintendo Switch 2, but also because they're launching a theme park. But also, they're probably doing a movie too. Lots of merchandise on the line. Donkey Kong is trying to make his return as one of those top-tier brands that Nintendo has in their stable. Now, over the last few years, I still need to do that Nintendo tier list video of how important each franchise is. But at the top, of course, it's Mario's. But what's joined Mario there is Animal Crossing, Splatoon. Zelda has come up there in the last generation with the success of Breath of the Wild and that new movie in production, Lego sets and whatnot. But Donkey Kong used to be up there up until like the late 90s, and then he kind of fell off a little bit. Came back in the Wii.
I would say really till like the early 2000s, because I mean 64 came out in what, like
1999. Yeah. But point being, like the rare buyout happened. Donkey Kong had an identity crisis, and yeah, so it went from like being like an S tier franchise to an A tier franchise, maybe briefly to a B, but back up to A with Country Returns being such a success on the Wii. People forget that Country Returns like sold pretty much as Skyward Sword.
I want to tell you a conspiracy theory I've always had, by the way, about the rare buyout. Because do you notice that curiously in Super Smash Bros. Melee, Diddy Kong doesn't have a trophy, even though Dixie Kong has one? King K. Rool has one. Donkey Kong Jr. has one. But no Diddy Kong. Very peculiar. But, it's Melee was coming out. Then the rare buyout happens. Diddy Kong ends up in Brawl. I really feel like there was this reaction. They're like, no, we got to take him out of the game. We're not giving them anything.
I don't think the timing would add up because I don't think they got bought out until like 2 years later. But
no, wasn't it? I thought it was. They got bought out in 01. I'm pretty sure.
Yeah, we'd have to check. But but I mean, Smash Melee was like pretty much a launch game. I think it came out like a month after.
Yeah.
So
it's just weird that Diddy Kong doesn't have a trophy.
I mean, I would say like the reason for that is like if they had more time, he probably would have been in the game. Yeah. Because I mean, like he was one of those like shoe-in. I mean, the shoe-in characters after at the end of the Melee roster would have been like DDD, Meta Knight, Diddy. So
maybe K. Rool.
Wario would have been one. Probably not K. Rool.
Well, no, back then I feel like that was the height of DK, man, as a brand. Like,
yeah, maybe before Smash started to hate. to hate Donkey Kong content, but that's a different podcast or a different video on the old Kong Kompendium. Just did a video there about why we're getting 3D DK instead of 3D Mario. Everyone thought that we were going to get the next 3D Mario game. It was all I was hearing on YouTube, all I was hearing from the so-called leakers, and here we are. So it's an interesting story of how we got there. But let's talk about the game itself. Donkey Kong Bananza. Matthew, give me your initial thoughts on the trailer in one singular word.
Bittersweet. It's I'll say this like it's weird. Like I'm probably a crazier Donkey Kong fan than you are. I mean, like he's my favorite video game
You're more
character.
exclusionary.
Yeah.
There's different Donkey Kongs. I like them all. Matthew's more of a rare guy.
Well, it's just, but I've just
As most
love,
people
like,
are, let's be honest.
I just love rare Donkey Kong, everything rare Donkey Kong, like more than anything in video games, like by a country mile. Like it's
A country mile, he said.
seriously, yeah, a Donkey Kong country mile. But it really is like I that's why I've been like dying for a new Donkey Kong game. Like just, I mean, you know me, I talk about it all the time. Like it really is like been a struggle for me all these years, but. It's one of those things for me, but I just hate that we finally got a new game. We're getting a 3D game of all things. And then initially when I see the trailer, it looks like 3D Donkey Kong, but it's Jungle Beat 2.0. By initial impressions, you got Donkey Kong in overalls. It's almost like, I told you before, like it's almost like the EPD team was like, well, if we're going to make Donkey Kong, we have to make it as Mario as possible. So put him in overalls and... make the art style look a certain way. Because even that's the funny thing. Most people, when they saw the initial snippet of the trailer, they're like, oh, new 3D Mario. And then, that's why for me, initially seeing the trailer, it felt like they made a Mario game and just put Donkey Kong in it. And that's what I didn't like about it, is that we're finally getting 3D Donkey Kong, but it just feels like a knockoff of Mario. Short of him having a mustache, how much more like Mario is it? And so... those were my initial thoughts. I think it's definitely gotten a lot better as time has gone on. With just seeing, Cranky Kong show up, it seems like the other Kongs are going to be in there. The Kremlings are probably going to be in there. So all that stuff makes me feel really hopeful about it. The one thing I'm still not totally sold on is the new design. I just think it's one of those things that it's not terrible. I think it's not as bad as I initially thought, but the new design to me just feels kind of gimmicky. I talked to you a lot about this privately, but I keep seeing the word expressive thrown around. Like if you go on Twitter and you just search the word expressive, you'll find a gazillion tweets about Donkey Kong. Like it almost feels like it's a bunch of bots that Nintendo
like
has.
A psyop.
That they're just trying to get everybody, like it's just so expressive. It's so good. And like to me, it's like I just feel like it's kind of gimmicky. It feels like a cheap form of expression. Because, like, to me, if you look at the old design of Donkey Kong, it feels like everything he did was so subtle and yet so funny, so expressive in its own way. It didn't have to try hard to be those things. In this design, it just feels like it's almost like slapstick humor. It's so hitting you over the head. Like, you see how Donkey Kong feels right now? He's excited or he's hungry. Like, when he sees a banana, it's like his eyes are big and his tongue's hanging out of his mouth. And it just feels like it's so over the top. Like somebody's just shaking you and being like, you get it? You get it? And I just, I don't know. It just feels kind of, like I said, like cheap. And, also I just always loved how Donkey Kong to me he could go from being like goofy to being really serious to being neutral, whatever it was. And it felt more natural with his old design. If you look at like the Super Smash Bros. Ultimate trailers, for example, like you see a wide array of emotions that he exhibits, but it doesn't feel like, again, like it's so over the top. But this new design, I don't know, it just strikes me as a little ridiculous. But so that's why I think that was the biggest thing for me is when I saw the trailer, I'm like, the Donkey Kong, he looks weird. He's wearing Mario's clothes. But in I was gonna say but in blue, but Mario's overalls are blue. And then it just appeared as though we didn't have the Donkey Kong elements that everybody's been wanting back. So, but those were my initial thoughts.
Yeah, let me give you my answer here. In one word, I would say vindication. Like, I feel like I've been screaming from the rooftops for like a million years that Donkey Kong is indeed bigger than Fire Emblem. It's bigger than Star Fox. It's bigger than so many other Nintendo franchises. I mean, when Country Returns came back and outsold every Metroid Prime combined, it was like this little pulse that happened. And it's like, yeah, I mean, we didn't all just have a fever dream in the 90s and like Donkey Kong for 3 years and then stop. The same fever dream that we had 13 years earlier before Donkey Kong Country with Donkey Kong in the arcade. And so I am just so happy to see the franchise be featured in anything at all right now. And so that sense of joy is overtaking a lot of what I might regret about the game in like 2 years time, or like after I play it. I am getting those vibes where I don't think if you're saying this looks like a Mario game that they plop DK into, or this looks like somebody else's game that they put DK into, I don't think you're wrong in saying that. But I will say, like, I feel like the more and more I understand about video games, the more I see certain studios have kind of a fingerprint on their work. You know, like I could look at any Dark Souls type of game from Software and just like understand, oh, this is like From Software. You know, they just got a look about it. So when they were debuting that in the Direct, I was like, that's some kind of Elder Scrolls, or not Elder Scrolls, Elden Ring or Dark Souls or something of one of those. I've never actually played one. But, you know, I could just tell by the way the game was moving, the way it felt, the weightiness to it. And similarly, Odyssey, their team has a very like particular type of flavor and design, and they're very much bringing that into this. When it comes to Donkey Kong and the expression, yeah, I'm also like very tired of hearing that talking point. I feel like it's a psyop from the FBI. Like it's fine. It is a different route to take. What I will say in short, because I could talk about this particular subject for an hour itself, is that there is more to expression than making a silly face or your face stretching. You know, there's you look at like funny YouTube videos of like, you know, take the famous keyboard cat video from YouTube. That has like a certain stiffness to it, which adds to the humor. Like the cat is not expressive. It just looks like a cat making a stoic face because the cat doesn't care about this. He doesn't know he's about to blow up on YouTube. He's just kind of playing the piano. And that adds to the humor. And much in the same way, Donkey Kong's lack of speech, his demeanor, his sort of like stiffness in his expressions made him expressive. It was just a different kind of expressive. What people I think want is like that kind of, I forgot what the style is. Some people call it Cal Arts, but it's not really Cal Arts. It's more like that classic anime style. You think of like old school Dragon Ball when Goku was a kid. Yeah. It's like that kind of stuff where like big smiles, big teeth, big eyes that move around. And you know, honestly, like from a certain standpoint, like depending on what pose Donkey Kong is making, I'm fine with it. But there's other things that he does that seem like a little too cutesy, a little too goofy. The way that he gets bananas in his eyes and his tongue is like lapping out like a dog. A little too far, I would say. Like it's not even really like funny. It just looks kind of strange. Whereas like, you know, the subtle British style humor of the old Donkey Kong would have just like given it this blank stare that was kind of longing. And that's kind of funnier. But you know, Nintendo in this age is very much more like, you know, front and center trying to grab people in with like crazy marketing. That's why there's cows driving motorcycles in Mario Kart. And, you know, to a certain extent, I'm sure it works. For this, like, it could definitely win me over. I'm not like offended by it. I think like certain parts of DK look strange, even like contrasted with Cranky Kong, like his fur textures and like face, like him changing, but the other Kong's not, will be kind of weird.
Yeah, I agree. That's a big thing for me too, is, you know, when Cranky Kong looks exactly the same, I feel like that just doesn't really make a lot of sense. Or it just feels like there's this weird juxtaposition. But I was going to say, like, the problem I have with the design too is everybody talks about they needed to do this in order to make him expressive. It's like, my problem is, it's kind of like you said. For one, I don't agree that that's even what expression is. Like, and that's why I said it's kind of like expression in its like cheapest or most gimmicky form. But the thing that bothers me is they think that, oh, because his old eyebrow didn't allow this, so they had to change the design. It's like, okay, so just take the old design and make his eyebrow flexible. Like, you don't, like, they did more to that redesign than people realize. Like, they didn't just adjust his eyebrow. They made his eyes different. They made his mouth. I think the mouth is the biggest thing. And that's where I'm like, dude, you could have done all the things they're doing with this design. They could have done with the old design. The fact that people think the eyebrow was just this limitation that they couldn't have done anything about without changing how he looked is such a ridiculous take to me. That,
yeah, I think the funny thing about it is that I thought that's what they were going to do. I thought the Mario Kart was like a little, like they always look kind of weird in Mario Kart. Now that the dust has settled a little bit, it does look like they're leading into this, at least for Mario and Donkey Kong, like kind of like in that, there's a bit of a separation between Donkey Kong and Donkey Kong Country. The Rare design will truly die the day that they put this Donkey Kong into a Donkey Kong Country. So we'll see on that. I still feel like the other design will kind of stick around because, like, they just made a theme park and immortalized the old Donkey Kong for the next like 20 years before they ever replaced any of these animatronics.
Can I just I just want to say something about that real quick too. I think what bugs me the most about somebody who prefers the old design is like, why would you not just open the park? Like for example, Donkey Kong Country is not open at Universal Studios in Orlando or in Hollywood yet. It hasn't opened yet, so it's only open in Tokyo. And to me, it's like, why would you just not wait to open that park until you've unveiled the new design and then have the new costume or the costume of the new design as opposed to the old one? Like, to me, like, there's this weird confusion going on, which on Kong Kompendium, we made a video about that too, just kind of like the bizarre state of the Donkey Kong franchise. And I think that to me is just a problem that could have easily been avoided. And then you see they're going back and changing all this old artwork. Like, you and I noticed during the Nintendo Switch 2 Direct that the NSO icon for Donkey Kong that was from Returns, they updated it to reflect the new design even in that. But it's like, but then
that was weird.
But then the theme park reflects the designs in Returns, which is what that icon or that render is from. And so I just feel like it's a problem that could have easily been avoided had they just said, okay, we'll just open this park in April instead of like February. I mean, like, it just opened like 2 or 3 months ago.
Yeah,
it just feels.
Either Donkey Kong Country will kind of be its own brand, and Donkey Kong proper is getting like a revival, or this is the new Donkey Kong Forever for everything. And we'll see what happens. I mean, I'm not sure.
Is there any precedent for this with any other Nintendo franchise? Like, does Zelda have other games going on right now where it's like a main line of like, this is what Link looks like in all these games, and then they have the Breath of the Wild and Tears of the Kingdom?
Yeah, I mean, they had the
Mario, for example. Like,
they had the games on Switch, the remake, and then Echoes of Wisdom. Those use like a toy style where Link looks like a toy, and he's wearing the green garb. There's also like during the Wii U era, he they were doing re-releases in 3D, but they also did A Link to the Past. I forgot. A Link Between Worlds was the game. And even on the same system, like just take the 3DS, there was A Link Between Worlds where he looks like A Link to the Past, and then there was Zelda Four Swords where he looks like, or not Four Swords, Triforce Heroes. Man, it's just like all my Zelda memories have been like extracted from my brain. I'm just like, only Donkey Kong matters.
Doesn't help that Triforce Heroes was a terrible game.
Triforce Heroes had the Wind Waker art style, and the other one had the other one. So like, people are also kind of jumping the gun on like this whole thing. I mean, we just had Mario look really different in Mario Wonder,
but
now he looks.
I don't agree with that though, because I feel like Mario Wonder, that's more of just like that's the graphical style of the game. Because you see in the box art, it's like that's normal Mario, and I feel like it's just the art style they went for the game. That's why to me there's a difference between a different art style and a different design. Like, because there's games like for example, what's the Kirby and the Rainbow Curse, the really good Wii U game that we played? That's such an underrated game, man. Beautiful art style with the claymation, but that's an example of like different art style, same Kirby. You know what I mean? Or Yoshi's Crafted World or Woolly World, same Yoshi, but it's a different art style. So that's why I'm like, to me, I just can't really think of any precedent that's been set for this, except to the fact that Donkey Kong 94 came out the same year as Donkey Kong Country. But I feel like that was also like a little bit different, because I feel like Donkey Kong 94 is kind of like just an expansion of something they already had.
Well, but also like here's the funny part about that is that they designed they were designed like next to each other. So Miyamoto was doing like artwork for that game at the same time he was like informing the Rare design. And so like, I just don't, we're in a different era now for sure, where like branding really matters, but that's where it's just like something doesn't match up with like if the only place where we're gonna see the rare design DK is in the theme park, it'd just be really strange. So part of me is just trying to like do the math on the other side, where I feel like they could have like Donkey Kong Country as this kind of retro outing as they did like New Super Mario Bros. And would they use like the other DK for that? We're not, that remains to be seen. I would say it's a pretty decent chance that they use that Donkey Kong. The other precedent I would say is Mega Man or Sonic. They use like different designs, and they're kind of like series that go on with each other. We had Sonic Superstars within the same chunk of time as Sonic Frontiers. There's kind of like
Sonic
they're serving two audiences.
That's actually a really good example, because 2D Sonic now is exclusively an old design Sonic.
The better Sonic.
It's weird. Sonic. There's like, I don't know which one I would pick between those, to be honest. Because when you see new Sonic and Generations, it's like, okay, I see why the new design became a thing.
The new design, they sold me on it in like games like Sonic Adventure, but something got kind of stale over time. It's really, I don't know. I
do agree that it was better then than it is now. But
although I'll say like the specific Sonic I like the most is the like anime intro to Sonic CD. I feel like that's what the best that he looks, because he's like cool and cute in equal measure at the same time. It's
I feel like the movie is a good design for him too. But this isn't a Sonic episode. This is a Donkey Kong episode.
So we, like I said, we could go over the design for eons of DK, but like ultimately, like that's something that for me will at the very most be slightly disappointing. It's not gonna like ruin my enjoyment of the game. There will be a part of me that like always wonders like, what if we could have like used a time machine to deliver a Switch 2 dev kit to Rare and see like what they would have cooked up, because they had this like really different idea of what Donkey Kong was that I think was like better. It's just like better in the way of like kind of vibes and brand. I mean, you listen to the way that the O Banana plays in this game versus the way it did originally in Donkey Kong 64, and it's just like, I'm not always like a nostalgic guy. Like if they start doing something better in a series, like, brother, I'm right there with you. But Rare had this like they had their finger on the pulse of like that perfect like place to have DK, where he's kind of oafish, but like also confident and like heroic, but also a little selfish. It's just like this perfect thing where he just like looks like a little too cute, a little too Wreck-It Ralph. I mean, people have been memeing on this game by comparing it to Wreck-It Ralph, and it's like, I mean, they're not necessarily outrunning the allegations.
Well, and that's the thing. Like, I feel like the design, that's part of it too, is that I feel like there's so
especially
many comparisons.
With the pants.
Like, people talk about how great this new design is, but I feel like there's so many things you can easily compare it to that it almost feels like a rip of that or a different interpretation of it. Whereas like the old design, I feel like there's nothing you could really compare it to. Like, it felt like it was very unique. And honestly, like, I'll say this, I don't even think Rare DK as we knew him recently was even that great either. When I say Rare DK was the best, I'm talking Donkey Kong 64 renders. I think that is like peak Donkey Kong. That is when he was at his absolute best. I think in video games, like how Smash has interpreted him, like Ultimate, I feel like is probably the best Donkey Kong in-game design that we've had. Like, to me, that is how I like my Donkey Kong. But to me, like, even the Rare renders, like, I saw a Reddit post about, like, am I starting to think Rare DK's ugly? And it showed, like, a render from Tropical Freeze, where everybody loves using his model from Mario Kart 8, which is, like, a turd with teeth. If you ask me, that's a terrible Donkey Kong. But I just think it's one of those things that... But what's changed about Rare Donkey Kong, even, is they started making him do those things, to me, that... are kind of silly and kind of take away from what made the design so great in the first place. Also... I say it all the time. People don't agree with me, but the teeth are horrible. Like, it's one of those things, if you don't mind the teeth with the design, but I always say, like, take any other character, like, put giant dentures in Diddy Kong's mouth and tell me it's not going to look
they did.
jarring.
They They did, and that's where Kevin Bayless had commented on it. It was just like they did not do the teeth that came after the buyout.
And
it
honestly,
just looks a little strange, like funny enough. Speaking of Sonic, that's one of the things that aggravates me about the Sonic movies is that their teeth are always visible, no matter like how they're talking. And I'm just like, that's not how mouths work.
Yeah, especially with gorillas or chimps or all those.
Like,
I mean,
I feel
usually they have to try to show their
right,
teeth.
like the teeth is usually like it's like a sign of aggression, but also like, if they were like smiling or grinning or something like that, like just use the teeth in more like I would say like limited capacity. But yeah, I mean, all that being said, like I'm really like not it's not going to ruin my enjoyment of the game. I think it looks fine. I just think like they changed Peak, and it's a risky strategy. We'll see if it pays off. But it just kind of depends on like how I'm seeing him. Sometimes he looks goofy and dumb, and sometimes he looks funny. Sometimes he
honestly, the best he looks is when he's just standing still.
Yeah, the box art looks great. I love how he looks on the box art. I'm fine with that, but it's just like they get a little wacky with the elasticity on his face. But honestly, at the end of the day, like
like when he's running, it's like somebody's like grabbing each cheek on his face and like pulling the skin back. Like it's just odd to me. Like it just feels too unnatural, and he almost has certain faces that look too human like to me, which is another thing that just really bothers me. But yeah, I mean, like you said, we can say a million things about the design, but I think the biggest thing for me is, like you said, is that to me, it's like, why are we changing the design of Donkey Kong when like it was a design that was so loved? I mean, when everybody saw it in the snippet we got of Mario Kart Worlds from the original Switch 2 reveal, it was one of those things like most people were upset about it because it's like, yeah, I mean, Donkey Kong's got a great design. Like, he's just a really funny, likable character. Again, I think the design's gotten worse over the years. With what Nintendo did to him, but I just think the foundation was there for something really great, and I don't really understand the change. And I also feel like part of it for me is I liked that there was this distinction between Mario characters and Donkey Kong characters, even though like they've become kind of like one and the same over the years. It felt like when Donkey Kong was in, like a Mario game, for example, there's still like this like distinguishable difference. But I feel like with this design, like if you look at him in Mario Kart Worlds now on the character select screen, he just really looks like a Mario character now. And I think that's what I don't like about it.
Yeah, so we'll see if the design sticks or not. I mean, I think also like in a world where Jungle Beat was like this monster success and it like was the best selling Donkey Kong game ever, we probably would have had a lot of things change with the franchise. But yeah, all that being said, it's like it doesn't hurt my enjoyment or excitement of the game. I play games mostly for the gameplay. It's like I would say mildly disappointing from my standpoint. So yeah, let's move on to like more of the game stuff that we're looking at.
Can I say this as something I wanted to pivot to that I just wanted to get your thoughts on is don't you think it's funny that and this is where you can kind of like take a little victory lap. I wasn't posting about this on social media, but I thought it. But the thing is, Michael and I have been saying like Donkey Kong was going to get revealed in this ever since we knew that there was going to be a Switch 2 Direct. Because the thing is, like these Donkey Kong rumors have, like most people are aware of them since 2020. They've really been around since like 2018. And to me, like the odd thing is that all these insiders kept telling everybody this game exists. Like if you see Nate the Hate, Spawn Wave, all these different people, they're all like, we know this game exists. We just don't know when it's coming out. Nintendo's sitting on it. And it was so funny to me, Michael, when we get to the Switch 2, everybody has their predictions. I saw all these threads that they're like rate it by like 100%, 75, 50, 25, and then like less than 10%. And when I say, I kid you not, probably 95% of people had Donkey Kong in the less than 10% category. And I found it odd because I'm like, everybody believes what these people are saying, these insiders, and they think this game exists. But it's like, if you think this game exists and they're going to make this Donkey Kong game eventually, all this stuff's being done with the brand lately, why does everybody think there's no chance whatsoever that we could be getting that game? It just assumed like, oh, we're gonna definitely get a Mario game. Why? Like, if not now, when? But I wanted to bring that up because you and I feel like we're like some of the only people that were like, dude, Donkey Kong's definitely going to be at this.
Yeah, we'd kind of like tried to arrange our schedule around it because we felt like it was finally time.
Yeah, I took off of work and everything.
But yeah, I mean, yeah, it's and that's what's weird. Like everybody's kind of been collectively gaslit to think that Donkey Kong is this like niche franchise that doesn't matter anymore, and like I don't know, the right developer, the right marketing plan, and he'll be right back on the top. And that's ultimately what I'm excited about. Cause like once Donkey Kong's big, it's like we could probably have both Rare Donkey Kong and this and like, you know, lots of things in between. But yeah, I mean, this, it just made sense. Really like the timing with everything else. It's like, I think what sealed the deal for, in my mind, was like kind of looking at the Mario plan, where they were thinking about like, oh, Mario's going to come out in they're going to have a movie next year. It's the 40th anniversary, and they could like tie a bow on it at the end with like a new 3D Mario, and it would synergize with the movie and everything. Meanwhile, DK, you know, like the Mario Park has been out for a while in multiple locations. The Donkey Kong is really the fresh new thing at Universal, and so yeah, it just made sense. Yeah, that's why, you know, I was saying like in one word, like vindication, and like, because the other thing is like, oh, no way they're not launching with a Mario. They got to launch with the Mario, and it's like, what about Donkey Kong? And it's just like,
well, also they are launching with a Mario. It's just Mario Kart, like
yeah,
and that's why you and I even talked about it's like the reason why Mario didn't make sense for me is like, dude, listen, I know Nintendo will completely oversaturate the market with Mario games all at once, but like it doesn't really make sense to me, or didn't really make sense that like you have to always think about things from like the casual consumer. People always think about like things from like the avid video game player's mind, where like they can make the distinction, but to the average person, they might get to the Switch launch and buy Mario Kart and not feel totally obligated to buy a Mario game 2 or 3 months later because they feel like they just got a Mario experience. And that's how casual consumers think. And so it's one of those things that, to me, like just even that alone kind of made me feel like there's no way a Mario game, like even if they show it here, it's not going to come out anytime soon. And so, but like you said, I just think it's odd, and I really feel bad for people, or not feel bad for them, but it surprises me how many people just don't know how big Donkey Kong once was. And I think the only reason, like you said in the last I think the last Kong Kompendium video we did is that there was never meant to be this big gap with Donkey Kong games. It kind of just became this thing of like they couldn't figure out a stable home for the character in the franchise and everything. And
game development takes forever now.
Yeah, that too. I mean, like this game's probably been being worked on.
That's
for
the
like
funny
8
thing.
years.
I mean, I remember the timeline where Jason Schreier, the reporter from Bloomberg, was saying that like any PlayStation game greenlit from now on is going to be like a PS6 game.
Yeah,
and that was like a couple years ago.
PS5 came out.
Yeah, I mean, just like games take forever to develop, and so if you start developing one and then it blows up in 2016, it's just like that's a 2020 game at the very least right now. I do think they sat on this one for a while. I think like the concepts they were cooking up. In my mind, the Switch 2 is really just the Switch Pro, but they went with like a new system architecture and like yada yada yada, and they would need that extra horsepower to make this game. And true to form, like yeah, I mean this really sells the power of the system more than I think a Mario game naturally would. They would really have to like kind of swing for the fences in what kind of like gimmick they put into the Mario game. So yeah, it's the right game for the right time, and yeah, I hope this sells like crazy. It would be nice to have Donkey Kong games more often than every 10 years.
Well, that's the part that scares me is like, see, I told you this is part of the reason I hate that they sat on this game, or that it's a Switch 2 title instead, is that I think that the Switch was a great opportunity for Nintendo to take advantage of trying to revive some old properties or create new ones. And I think they really didn't take advantage of that opportunity, because when you have a system that's sold as well as the Switch with such a large install base, that to me is the opportune time to strike with things like, okay, maybe let's try to reboot Star Fox or F-Zero, or in this case, bring a new Donkey Kong game. Let's see what we're working with when we're actually dealing with a system with tons of users on it. is this something that a lot of people latch onto? And that's why for me, like it blows my mind where like you'll get something like Star Fox Zero on the Wii U with like, how many people bought that system? Like 20 million, I think, total. Like, I mean, ridiculous flop. And that's when you want to do something with Star Fox. And I guarantee you, Nintendo probably looked at that game and they're like, part of the reason it didn't do well is people don't care about Star Fox. And it's like, dude, if it could have been as bad as Zero was, or as weird as Zero was, I should say. And if that game was on the Switch, I think it would have done mildly well. I really believe that.
Yeah.
And I just think that's my problem is that if Donkey Kong Bonanza bombs on the Switch 2, they're going to look at it as like a Donkey Kong problem, but it could be a Switch 2 problem. Like,
well, I don't know if
not do well.
I don't know if Nintendo's going to look like that, or even if they're looking at Star Fox like that, but people will.
I just think that's how short-sighted people in business are sometimes. They just think, this is why we should have spent this money on a Mario game. That's how the movie industry is big time. Like they always just look at this is why we should make more remakes instead of doing things that are original. But there's so many things that go into what makes a movie release successful. For example, what other movies it's releasing alongside, what time of year it's coming out. Like there's so many different factors that play into that. And it's the same kind of thing with this. Like, who knows? Like, if Switch 2s are hard to come by July, that could make a big difference. If the Switch 2 doesn't sell well, which I told you my unpopular opinion is I think the Switch 2 could be a flop because I just think when I think about why the Switch 2 was so successful, it's because every rando bought one. Every normal person bought one because it was a new thing, just like the Wii was. But I just think the Switch 2 in a lot of people's eyes is going to be like, all right, I've been there, I've done that. It's not really like, I don't really care to do this again for all the casual consumers anyway. And so I don't know. I just feel like the idea has been used similar to like the Wii to Wii U, even though the Wii U's problem, I think, was more like the name, the marketing, all that stuff. But I think it's part of it, And so, anyway, not to go on a tangent about that, but I just think there's a chance the Switch 2 might not be a like crazy success.
Yeah, definitely a chance. Nintendo has not had as much success with sequel consoles, from NES to Super NES, from Wii to Wii U, from DS to 3DS, Game Boy to Game Boy Advance. Every time they've done it, there's been kind of diminishing returns with it. We are kind of in a new era, though, so I think they're going to keep Switch on the market for a while because we're kind of moving to this place where console generations are not as much of a thing. So yeah, we'll see how this sells. I mean, I'm curious because I could see either a scenario happening. I could see the price just being a little too high, especially heading into whatever giga recession we're going to have in the US. I could see this being like a super popular thing and just continuing at the momentum of the Switch One. I mean, they definitely got like a good strong pair of games to start it off, and then we'll see what happens later on. But yeah, I mean, probably not the same meteoric rise as the Switch One because like you just can't put lightning back in a bottle. This is just another one. But
right.
At the same time, Apple has continuously hit sales targets with just like barely any. I mean, I used to work at an Apple store, and I can't tell you the difference between iPhone 10 to iPhone whatever we're on, or 16, 18. I don't even know what number we're on right now.
Yeah, and I mean, and honestly, I mean, like if you look at PlayStation and Xbox, I mean, they're essentially just upgrades of the previous one. Like they really don't add anything new. But I feel like Nintendo, it's always been because people don't really play their third-party games there. I think that's what makes the big difference. Like for a lot of PlayStation users, like their biggest thing is not just so much the Sony first party games, but all the third party, online games of that variety that people really buy those systems for. Like Call of Duty is a big thing, but people haven't normalized Nintendo as being a platform for those types of games. And so because of that, I feel like you really buy Nintendo for the Nintendo games. And for a lot of people, that might not be enough to buy a system. And so what made the Switch successful to me is that it's got this unique selling point that no other system can say that it's done before. And I think that was part of the reason why, again, like the Wii was a big success. You know how many people bought a Wii and had Wii Sports and like did nothing else with it? And I have a lot of friends that have Switches and literally they have like Mario Kart, maybe they have Smash, and that's like it.
Which is why they're going to charge more for those games. But
and Anyway, but
Yeah. So I mean, we'll see if it does well. Obviously, that'd be my hope. But also, I think that like we're just putting DK into that going forward. Like they didn't spend all that theme park money for nothing.
yeah, that's true.
So it's kind of like you look at Pikmin and Nintendo was just like, I don't care. We're gonna keep like letting this bomb until it sells. And lo and behold, with enough elbow grease, like Pikmin has like grown substantially this generation.
Well, and you see, I think Pikmin 4 was a success, right? That's kind of my argument with the Switch thing is that like, hey man, it's almost like if you have a system with enough players on it that
right,
you'll sell games.
That's where Pikmin got really unlucky because it was on the GameCube. It skipped the really successful Wii and then was put on the Wii U. Just like couldn't be worse. And to a certain extent, Star Fox suffered a similar
I was about
fate.
to say Star Fox Adventures and Assault on GameCube, nothing on the Wii.
Not having a Star Fox game on Wii was a war
travesty.
crime, an absolute war crime.
Just it literally would have made sense. I think it could have helped. Like honestly, what they did with the Wii U, how like the gamepad is the cockpit. I feel like the Wii remote being the R wing probably would have made
games
even
were
more
so
sense.
fun. Like the most fun version of Resident Evil is on the Wii.
Or Resident Evil 4, yeah.
Yeah. And so like, it's just
I agree.
What were you guys doing?
Yeah.
I think maybe they got like skittish because Prime 3 kind of like, didn't really perform as well as they might have hoped. But I mean, I don't know, dude.
Well,
like,
that's an example of, I feel like, where you should have been able to play that game in more than one way. Because I think that's part of the reason I still have never finished Prime 3, even though I think it's the coolest Prime in the trilogy. Especially because, like, you go to the space pirate world, which has never been a thing in any Metroid game. They just conceptualized that. And I'm like, that's awesome. Omega Ridley, that's super cool. But it's just, to me, I can't stand playing that game the way that it is. And that's where, like, the Wii, I think, went too far with certain things. Like Skyward Sword, for example. That's another game I cannot play.
Yeah, they kind of went, like, it's funny because in the early Wii days, it was like the Wii accented the gameplay where like, it was great for Twilight Princess, but didn't overpower the experience. Same with Mario Galaxy. And then they just went crazy with it, like with DKC returns like that, ruined the game in some senses. Like, it just makes it like a version that I don't really want to return to, even though there is no good version of that game. But
link to the Kong Kompendium for
you. What do you think about the gameplay in this, like the destruction elements and all of that?
I want to get back to that. Yeah, so here's my thing. Like, I think the game, it's kind of weird. I'm like super excited, and I know it's going to be a good game because the team behind it, but I will say I'm cautiously optimistic because I think the destruction feature can actually be like a huge blow to the game, because I've seen that when they were like showing demos of the game in the treehouse, it's like, they would show you like, oh, there might be some puzzle you have to solve, or like, oh, this hidden golden banana. Also, you can just like literally pound through the wall to the side of you and just get there. And I could really see this game where like you're literally just destroying everything and that's how you find every secret, rather than having to like solve a puzzle or complete a platforming segment, or like, you can literally just break your way to the banana. And I wonder if maybe that's an entry level thing where like, oh, maybe if there's people who are super young, they're inexperienced gamers, like it's a easier way for them to be able to progress through the game. And then people that are more seasoned, they can play it a different way. But I do think the destructible nature of the game is something I'm like kind of, like I said, cautiously optimistic about.
Yeah, I'm somewhat nervous about it because it's just hard to pull off, both from the standpoint of game design and frame rate. Like, it's very much out of Nintendo's wheelhouse. They dabbled a little bit with this sort of stuff in Breath of the Wild, but this is like just completely different with like the level of destruction you can bring upon the world. And so I do wonder if they're going to stick the landing, and I do wonder if we're going to have kind of a variable choppy frame rate, or if we're going to get a smooth 30 or 60. Like, DK is such a challenging character to get right in a lot of senses, because the brand has sort of buttered its bread on immersion, on incredible graphics, incredible music, and so you kind of have to have it all. And what we also want from a title like this is a buttery smooth 60 frames per second. Or even, gosh, if we get to 120, that would be neat to take care of that new feature set. But like, with this game, yeah, I've heard of frame rate dips in some of the preview materials that people have been putting out, and that makes me nervous. And of course, like, just with something like Breath of the Wild, I think like it was definitely a novelty, and that's why that game got tens all around. But if that game came out today, it would receive a much lower score, and that's where like it seemed like opinions soured on Tears of the Kingdom like really fast. Not to say that like people think it's a bad game, but like it was kind of weird how not overly positive that reception was. And I think the open world formula is just getting a little tired, like because everybody's been doing it, it's not really special anymore. Will DK kind of coming in at the end of that whole party, as he very much did at the end of the platforming zeitgeist on the 64, will that kind of hurt the experience?
Well, I'll say like the one thing I'll say is like you were talking about DK is kind of hard to get right, and I agree with kind of like in the context that you put it, but see, this is kind of the thing to me why I think the digging thing or the destructible environment thing kind of takes away from it, is that I've always said like Donkey Kong is actually, to me, could be Nintendo's most valuable character for this type of game, like 3D sandbox or open world, because he can literally do everything. It's like when we talked about in the reaction, it's like Mario can't do these things. He needs some like gimmick like the flood or the hat or the Luma or whatever it is. Cappy, I said the hat, but Donkey Kong, it's like he can, roll, he can jump, he can climb, he can swing, he can do all these different things. And that's what makes him, I think, a really good character for this type of game. And so that's why, like I said, I feel like the whole digging or destructible environment element can take away from some of that, where it's like it'd be really cool to get some really good open environments that you can just have fun traversing, kind of like, I think that's what the appeal of like the PlayStation Spider-Man games is that, for when I used to see you and Trevor play the Spider-Man games, I'm like, this really doesn't look that fun, but what does look fun? Just getting around places. And I'm like, that's what could make Donkey Kong a lot of fun. It's honestly like you're controlling like the Hulk or something. The idea that you can jump really far, the climbing, the wall jumping, the swinging, all that stuff. And so, that's why, yeah, like I said, I just wonder if it's going to be one of those things where it's like, man, it makes the game less fun,
Yeah. I do like how ambitious it is, though. I mean, it's kind of like channeling a bit of Minecraft in its
I feel
design.
like that's why they're doing it.
Well, yeah, I mean,
hey, kids,
funny
like
enough.
Minecraft.
Funny enough, when Minecraft came out, and I felt like this was total cope at the time, but now that I'm seeing this, maybe there was something to it. Miyamoto was saying like, man, yeah, I had an idea kind of like Minecraft one time, and just like, it didn't work out, and I'm mad that someone got to it first. Something along those lines. Don't take it to the bank, but like you said, something like that, and this kind of feels like that game. But yeah, I mean, we'll see, and I mean, the kids yearn for the mines, Matthew. They love Minecraft. It's the most popular video game ever. And if DK can kind of do the Nintendo rendition on the Minecraft concept, like, hey man, that's good for the franchise. I mean, that's also like, this isn't my ideal kind of Donkey Kong game. I even feel like for 3D Mario, I enjoy the games like 3D World more than I enjoy the games like Odyssey, just because I feel like the nature of these games being like kind of like action filled and challenging rather than exploratory and kind of slower. I feel like that makes for more exciting gameplay for the characters, but yeah, I mean, like I'll definitely take this. I like both, but my ideal DK game is a little different. And yeah, I mean, we'll see where the destruction stuff goes. I mean, I'm excited to learn more about Donkey Kong's moveset. I feel like they're playing it really close to the chest with the treehouse stuff. I have it pulled up and looking at it while we're recording this podcast. And it just seems like there's certain moves that I feel like I saw in the trailer, like him rolling and then bouncing into the ground and kind of ricocheting off of it, that they haven't really done in the treehouse footage. The whole feature of like holding a rock and being able to like either surf on it or use it as a means to jump even higher.
They showed that in the treehouse.
If that that stuff they did. But like if there's a lot of depth to how Donkey Kong moves and I can just like have a lot of fun with the way that I get somewhere, that's almost like makes up for the lack of like polished level design that you would get in sort of like a 3D world. Which is how I felt about Odyssey. Like, you know, it was easy to get there. I get there in like 15 different ways, but the fun and the challenge became like, oh, can I get there this way? Can I do this cool trick and get there all the same? And
Well, that's why I even wonder with the climbing with Donkey Kong if that could be like a problem, you know. Like think of an Odyssey when you get to the top of New Donk City, like that highest point, and all the different things you have to do to get there. And like imagine if you could just climb the wall and get there.
yeah, I mean, it'll definitely take a different type of design
Yeah.
to make it work, but I think it could happen. And I apologize for the yawning. We're recording this at like past Papa's bedtime. But we had to make content. We have to talk about this. Let's see. So we've covered the gameplay. We've covered the design stuff. Let's talk about what we think this game is going to shape up to be in terms of like, are we getting the Kremlings back? Are the other Kongs coming back? Is there more to this Odd Rock character? Is there more to this game even in terms of like something like multiplayer? I want to hear a little bit of your thoughts on that, Matthew.
You know, it's funny. I'm glad you brought up the Odd Rock because and the Odd Rock seems like it's going to be another character, which I won't spoil it for like maybe the 5 people out there who don't know what I'm referring to. But if you're interested, you can look that up on your own. But that's another thing I wanted to bring up is like that's also something I don't get about like when I say Donkey Kong can do these things as a character. It's like, you know, you don't need to have the DK version of Cappy or Luma or Flood. It's like because Donkey Kong doesn't need those things. And I think that's what's already great about the design. But I digress on that. As far as what I think we're getting, yeah, I mean, I definitely think we're getting all the DKC elements. And that's what initially seeing the trailer, I'm like, man, this is totally going to be like Jungle Beat. But after seeing all the like, you know, crocodile motifs and imagery, for example, I just think it would be really tone deaf and cruel on Nintendo's part, which I could totally see them doing that or being like, we'll just make our own. Like what people like about these is just that they're crocodiles, not that they're these particular characters. I could, or the cynical side of me could see that, but I just think they know what they're doing and that would be just kind of cruel and silly. Like even in Returns, that's why even though that game is full of jungles and whatnot, you didn't see any enemies that resembled crocodiles because I think they knew like that would just be messed up. Same with Tropical Freeze. But yeah, I do think we're getting all those elements. I mean, the fact that, you know, we know Ramby's in the game. There's ostriches that look a lot like Espresso. I mean, I feel like we're going to get the animal buddies. We've seen the fossil of Naughty, so at least there's going to be at worst references to like even just the regular animal bad guys in the DKC games. I can't see a world where we don't have Diddy Kong if we have Cranky Kong. I mean, you know, they've been around since the game they debuted in together. Unless you think that OG Donkey Kong is Cranky Kong. But yeah, I mean, I think we're getting all that stuff. And I think it's like you said, I think they just want to use a lot of this stuff to continue to hype up the release of the game. You know, if you just blow your load now and, you know, show all your cards in the beginning, there's nothing to continue to hype up the game beyond just showing more gameplay. And I think they'll probably hit us with like some of those like Diddy Kong reveals, King K. Rool reveals, whatever, like right before the game comes out, probably in like a game specific direct. You know, so I am very optimistic about all that stuff now. So that's kind of where I stand on it.
Yeah, I feel like there's a lot that we haven't seen in this game and in Mario Kart World Tour, but
World Tour, Tour's the app game.
Whatever, dude, whatever it's called. But yeah, I think there's a lot that we've kind of hinted at that we haven't seen. You know, like why is Cranky holding a shovel? You know, a little curious.
The game's about digging.
The game is about digging, but like I wonder if other folks can like hitch a ride on DK's back and help him out. I also wonder with the game chat feature being such a big push from Nintendo, if perhaps we're going to be seeing some kind of multiplayer co-op experience for this game that is facilitated with either multiple systems or online. That would be a tall order given the technical limitations that are at play here and how much this game is pushing the system. But I don't know. I feel like it's crazy enough to be like a neat idea to have someone, some kind of co-op experience in here. I mean, they've done similar in Mario Galaxy, Mario Odyssey, so it's not outside the realm of possibility that maybe player two is controlling the Odd Rock or controlling Diddy Kong, Cranky Kong, so on and so forth, or maybe that they're used as power-ups. The way that Cranky refers to Rambi also suggests that maybe we'll be riding on the animal buddies. And so I think there's just a lot that's going to be at play here. Although, yeah, it's just like I just really don't know what to expect at the end of the day. Like I could see a bunch of different outcomes happening. And honestly, I could see this game bombing. Like, you know, it's ambitious, it's different, and the risk in doing that is that you might lose the built-in audience, you might miss, but like you got to take these risks sometimes. I mean, the way that they kind of dismantled and rebuilt Zelda into Breath of the Wild certainly paid off, and I hope that's what they're going to accomplish with Donkey Kong, but yeah, I think the Kongs are in. I think the Kremlings are in. I think this is going to be a big treat, celebrating like the entire history of Donkey Kong. I mean, even the way that he collects the big banana gem things, banandiums. Why does he eat them if they're currency or like a power up? I don't really understand. We'll find out in the game, I suppose. But yeah, when he cracks it open, it says "Oh banana," calling back to 64, and then he eats all the little gems like it's Jungle Beat. And he has barrels like he does in Country. There's obviously the Cranky reference. They changed Rambi's design back to the pre-retro design.
Thank goodness.
Yeah, thank goodness.
Interpretation of him was terrible.
Yeah, I was like, you guys seen Madagascar? Just like,
I was gonna say really quick, by the way, that's kind of the interesting thing though. You bring up Zelda and like the risk they took. But see, I think what people really latched onto with Breath of the Wild though is that they always wanted to see like the Zelda environment in an open world, like Hyrule, for example. And I think that's why I like that they took the more, I guess, safer approach to doing a new thing. And that's why with this, like, I think what bothers me with this game, with Bonanza, is that what I feel like would have been the smarter choice is like, leave the design relatively the same as before and make like all the worlds you visit in like the Country games, like the 3D environments. Like just imagine like, you know, the Monkey Mines or, you know, the Gorilla Glacier, Kremkrock Industries. Like if you just took those and made those like 3D environments, and then like you could have the stuff from Donkey Kong Country 2, like, you know, Crocodile Isle and all its different worlds. And I think that would have been a really interesting, like safe, easy, like, oh man, people are instantly going to be in on this. And so that's why it's just kind of like the part I don't like about some of the changes they're making, because it feels like an unnecessary risk. And I think if you had done the safe bet and then this game is a hit, now Donkey Kong's here to stay. But now, like you said, there might be some of these changes that some people don't jive with. And we've seen a lot of people on our Donkey Kong channel that are huge fans of the series that they just think the stuff feels too generic. Like we've seen a lot of people say like the environments feel generic. It feels like they just could literally place any character in these environments and nothing would change. And I gotta be honest, I don't totally disagree with that, you know, from what we've seen so far. And that's why I said it feels like a Mario game just with Donkey Kong in it, where it's like you easily could have just like I said, taken those things you've seen in those other games, made them 3D environments, like reimagine them in that way. And I think instantly it just would have pleased everybody, you know what I mean? Or something similar, more akin to that. But we have seen a level that looks exactly like Jungle Hijinks, so who knows? We might get to Donkey Kong Isle or DK Isle, and then like they have all those environments or whatever, and then it makes more sense.
Yeah, and I mean, I think like again, like this studio has a certain fingerprint. You look at Mario Odyssey, and you don't see like, oh, I'm going to Grass World, then I'm going to Desert World, then I'm going to Water World. That's how Mario games typically play out, and that's how even like, I mean, stuff like 3D World did, but when they get a chance to really flex their muscles and show off, they do crazy stuff. I mean, the Cap Kingdom being kind of like this Nightmare Before Christmas thing, the realistic fossils of the Cascade Kingdom, the giant dragon that you fight, like none of this stuff is traditional Mario. But at the same time, inside of there's a million callbacks to the retro classics, whether it be the 2D sections that are interspersed with the levels, or whether that be the Mushroom Kingdom that you unlock in the end. Like, I think there's going to be plenty of goodies for that kind of classic thing. Although it will more so be like a callback or a reference rather than just like being itself. And so that's what we lose. You know, we're never going to have the 3D game of our dreams as it relates to the rare Donkey Kong. Like, that game is just like never going to happen. Those people are making different games, and you know, we're just gonna have to let that one be a dream. That being said, I do think what we're looking at is going to be quite exceptional. You know, as long as they keep the roll jump feeling good, as long as they, you know, it flows well, as long as there's challenge as well as exploration, I think we're looking at a banger here, Matthew.
Yeah, I do want to say a final thought I have is that do you think there's any snowball's chance in you know where that we get a like how Odyssey they have the different costumes and you know we've already seen like the overalls is like
Absolutely
you know,
yes.
No, that like we get like a rare face Donkey Kong.
Absolutely yes. Again, like just look at the studio. Look at the way that they did Mario Odyssey. Not only did you have like this 8-bit one that looks like the classic NES Mario that you can use in 3D even though it doesn't move, you also have the Mario 64 skin. So
well,
like,
but those
will
are
it be a
different,
Donkey Kong
like,
64 skin or will it be like a rare design skin?
Well, that's what
Who
I mean.
knows, but there will be
them.
some sort of like rare Donkey Kong inside of this game.
Yeah, because I'm sure you know there will be like you said probably a Donkey Kong 64 skin or something to that effect. But I just wonder if maybe they have like a rare. But my only thing that makes me feel like probably not is they would have had to like design that. You know what I mean? And that probably would have taken time, resources, money. And so that's the thing that makes me feel like why would they have that in there? But dude, I'm telling you right now, if there's a way to change his face back to more like the rare style, I'm like doing that day one. But yeah, so but I you know I'll say in closing, I am incredibly excited for the game. You know, it's a new Donkey Kong. Like I said, I think the reaction I had is I've been waiting all this time, and then it looked kind of more like a Mario game, so it kind of I was in shock to be honest, to a degree. But it's one of those, I'm just glad we're getting DK. It seems like now that we're getting a lot of the stuff that DK fans love and have wanted back for so long. And so, I'm just really excited to see what lies in store for us.
Yeah, and that's really the takeaway here. I mean, however you feel about the redesign, if you don't like it to the point that it bothers you and you don't want to buy the game, that's totally fair. If you don't want to buy the game because Nintendo is getting a little wild with these prices, that's totally fair too. But for me personally, yeah, I'm just thrilled to have another Donkey Kong game. And this one, like, even if it wasn't a Donkey Kong game, let's say this was like Shovel Knight or, Billy Hatcher and the Giant Egg, I'd still be kind of into it. Cause like, yeah, I mean, the gameplay mechanics just look fun. It looks cohesive. It looks, honestly, the one thing I'll say about people saying like, it looks like a game that doesn't belong to Donkey Kong is like, no one else could do it like this. You couldn't really build a Mario game that's like with this level of destruction. Minecraft kind of works in its own like Lego sort of way, but this is really like, charting a bit of new territory here that I think is a sight to behold. Yeah, absolutely. Like, there's some kind of, some people even said it looked like Banjo with the funny eyeballs like pasted onto rocks. That I am like a little bit concerned of like, will the characters taking this motif of like everything's a rock or a gem like get kind of boring after a while? We will find out, but yeah, Nintendo's also definitely like playing their cards very close to the chest. They've shown like only slivers of this game. If there's a corner they're about to turn and they're like, "Uh-oh, this is like too cool. We can't show it yet." They stop the treehouse stream. They're like, it's very controlled, and so I think we're in for a treat. I mean, if you think about the way that they marketed Zelda Breath of the Wild, is they basically let people play in the little like baby area.
Yeah.
And then they were like, the game's like 90% bigger. And I'm like, we're in for a treat. I think something similar is happening here.
Yeah. And I do think it's interesting. It's like when I was listening to one of Uncle Al's videos about the Kremlings, I thought it was peculiar that the Nintendo Treehouse, they didn't talk to Cranky Kong, even though they had the option to. they're like, oh, we're not going to do this. And then we see some of the text with Cranky Kong talking about, the banana bandit and, had to figure out or knew where he ran to hide to and all these different things. And it's almost like they didn't want to open up the conversation.
It's almost like they didn't want to, but they also did. Because they let other people film their gameplay sessions,
right,
at the events where they did uncover that text, and so it's like, yeah,
but it's more for them at that point. It's just like a fan's interpretation of what they think is happening versus like,
Nintendo kind of pontificating on it, and yeah. So that's the point. The fans are supposed to speculate because we're supposed to be hungry for Kremlings, and then they will come back in some form. At least that's my theory. If I'm proven wrong, I'll chuckle and move on. Like if the Kremlings aren't in the game, like if Diddy Kong's not in the game. I really I'm not super emotionally attached to games the way that I might have been when I was younger. And so like, I'll still enjoy it for what it is, even if it's not like my particular choice of what they would do with a Donkey Kong game. But yeah, I do also think like, I'm like 90% sure we're getting both of those things.
Yeah, same. I mean, now for me, I those things do matter to me more, but I just, for me, have always wanted to see like the Kremlings come back. I think that's such a big deal for me. Like the minute they get used in like a mainline series Donkey Kong game again, like, and that's why I say, dude, I always say this all the time. You don't have to use the same villains in every game. It's not like we need K. Rool all the time. But I just want to know that Nintendo acknowledges these characters and that they're still on the table for use. And that's it. And then you don't have to use them again for the next 10, 15 years. You can do something different for the next couple of Donkey Kong games. But to me, it's just annoying to me when you see Mario will like almost always exclusively use Bowser. And then like, especially for Zelda, like it makes more sense for a game like Zelda to have different enemies and how it always ends up, even when it doesn't seem like it's going to be Ganon. And then it ends up being Ganon, like in Skyward Sword's case, or some form of Ganon or whatever. And then even in Metroid, like I told you all the time, I'm like, in Metroid, like things canonically die. How many times has Ridley died and they found a way to keep using him? Like, I mean, in Prime alone, he appears twice, in the Prime trilogy. And it bothers me because I'm like, dude, if they can use Ridley all these times, they can use K. Rool at least one more time.
Yeah, like, my shtick is a little different. I'm like, I don't mind if you use the Kremlings necessarily, but you got to fill those shoes with something compelling, and they just haven't come up with any enemies that are nearly as interesting. I think Jungle Beat was kind of like a nice change of pace because up until then it had been all Kremlings all the time, and so it was nice to get like the funny looking pigs and the funny looking birds, but like. Yeah, I mean, you gotta do something on par or better, and that's where it's like. I mean, I think they came kind of close with the Snowmads. The leaders and the bosses kind of were lame, but the concept itself, the funny penguins, I think it was okay. But yeah, I mean, you got to do something better, and I think for this, like for the Voidco characters, looking very brutalish to me, looking very side character. I don't think that like that's the last boss. There's no way.
There's this thing with Nintendo to me that like what would Donkey Kong fight? He'd fight Bad Monkey. I just like I don't understand that like why that's what you come up with. I think that's another reason why the Kremlings work so well is it's such a juxtaposition to like you have gorillas and just primates in general, and then you have like humanoid crocodiles. It's like those things just contrast really well. I think even on like a deeper level, even the color schemes contrast really well. And I think that's something that's like not, or it's like super underappreciated as far as like that goes. But I just look at like, I feel like if Mario was created now by Nintendo, like all his enemies would look like Wario and Waluigi. Like we would never end up with like a Bowser again. And it's like, that's part of the reason why Bowser's so cool. Like, and all these Nintendo characters, I mean, like Ridley, like Ganon, like all these other bad guys, I think what makes them cool is that they're so different from the protagonists. Like, it's just, it's a completely different thing. And I think usually the lame villains in a lot of these games are the ones that are too samey. Like, does anyone care about Dark Samus? I mean, Dark Samus is a cool character, but like, it's just Samus, but dark.
Yeah, I mean, I thought it was like cool in one Zelda game where you fight Shadow Link and it's like symbolic of kind of like putting away the bad side of yourself, but yeah, it's it's a trope that's really common in games, movies, that I think has sort of worn out its welcome. And so, and yeah, I mean, like, there just hasn't been a compelling character like K. Rool out of this series yet.
But and that's why I say they can make one whenever they want. We just need to see K. Rool come back at least one time or sometimes. Like,
I mean, if you're going to go all bombastic with the visuals of this game, make Donkey Kong real silly, you kind of need K. Rool because he matches that goofball energy. And I think, like, I mean, honestly, like with this animation style that they're going with, I'm more excited to see what they would do with K. Rool than I am with Donkey Kong.
Yeah.
Because K. Rool is like built for this sort of stuff.
Yeah. But that's why I say, again, I just want to see him come back once. And that's all it is. And that's why, honestly, I wish Nintendo franchise, like I said, I wish games like Mario and Zelda and whatever would use different villains from time to time. Because I think those are series where they actually should do that. It'd be cool to play a Mario game and you have a bad guy. Like I told you before, I think that's part of the reason why people have such a strong affinity for the Thousand Year Door is because, like, the enemy's not Bowser. Like, Bowser's in that game, but it's something completely different. And I think that just, or even the Mario and Luigi games, like, what's that guy? Like, not Veitai, that's Zelda. Yeah. Like, I think people like that stuff because it's just a different experience. And it's like, oh man, it's cool to see Mario go up against something else. I mean, for all the comic book people out there, I mean, imagine if, like, Batman only ever fought the Joker or Spider-Man only ever fought the Green Goblin. Like, that would get boring. And that's why it's like, I think it's good for that to happen. But in this case, like, Kremlin or King K. Rool is like the Joker, the Green Goblin. So, like, he needs to come back at this point. And then in Mario, Zelda, whatever's case, like, I feel like they need to fight one of their other universe's bad guys. Heck, you could make a Mario game where Wario is the antagonist. Like, that would actually be sweet. That would be, like, really cool.
Better yet, you could just make a Wario game.
Yeah, they really do.
Another Wario World. That game had so much swag.
Excellent.
Yeah, so much swag. But yeah, I think that'll about wrap our
the peel off this
5 hour long analysis of like 20 minutes of gameplay. Obviously, we've got a lot to anticipate with this game. There's a lot riding on the line, both for the franchise and for our enjoyment of it. So, yeah, we'll keep checking in once there's big news. We're not going to talk about the spoiler thing. I don't know if there's much to say about that. Like, it's just confusing given that they're going with the Rare framing of the story, but also introducing this wild card. What does it all mean? Is there time travel in this game? Maybe. If we've got a fossilized Naughty and... You know, not that Nintendo cares about lore or timelines very much, but, you know, there will be a lot to discuss with the next bit of information that we get for this game, which I would imagine is coming in May or June. So until then, check out our other Donkey Kong videos. We will cover some of the other stuff from the Direct as we see fit. Why is Kirby Air Ride being made ahead of Smash Bros? I got something for that.
And why that's awesome, by the way. We definitely are going to do a Kirby Air Ride episode.
Yeah. Yep. But yeah, that'll do it for this episode of We the People. You stay flossing out there.